And well, I guess first, I'm Alex. I was a interfaces trainee 2 years ago. I'm in the material science department and I'm in Karen Chrisman's lab, and I work on just therapeutics for myocardial infarction. And we have one of our lab members, or previous lab members. He graduated in 2023. This is Dr. Javon Hunter. And yeah, take it away.
Thank you for that warm welcome, Alex. So thank you all for being here today. I really wanted to make this super informal because I was literally sitting in all of you all's shoes. As Alex said, no less than over a year ago. God, it's been a long time. Yeah. So I haven't been too far away from being a grad student, and I just kind of wanted to share some of the things that I've learned since I've graduated and some of the things that I've seen that are similar and different about academia and industry. I'm gonna do the professor thing today. I want to hear from everybody in the room first. I want a really quick, brief introduction of yourselves. Give me name, year, major, and really quick thing you want to And looks like you're volunteering first, right?
I'm sorry, I've been, say what I need to say again. One more time.
Name, year, major, and just one thing you want to learn today.
All right, I'm a third year in the chemistry department, but I do like biophysics research. Yeah, and today I want to learn, I guess I really want to learn about your path from being here to whatever you're doing now.
Gotcha. Good.
Yeah.
You want to popcorn somebody else or you want to volunteer?
I'm third year of bioengineering PhD. And I was gonna say the same thing. I wonder what you've been doing since you graduated from here, and I guess how being in industry is different, like what the transition from PhD life to industry life is like.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Alejandra. I rotated in Chrisman in the winter. She did not want me.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It was not a mesh anyways. How do I get past that? No, wait, what was that question? Bioengineering. Second year. Yeah, but oh, whatever, I wanted to see what you were up to, yeah, it's fine. The Christmas lab was coming, I was like, alright, hang out with the peeps.
Am I going?
Yeah.
I'm Katie, I'm bioengineering PhD second year. I'm in Tom Lew's and Albert Shaw's lab, I do MRI stuff. What else? Oh, yeah, just why, maybe you did industry, right? Yeah, like what was the choices behind that over staying in academia? And yeah, because you see a lot of people transitioning that way and I wanna know what the changes.
Nice.
I don't know, wanna go?
Yeah, sure. I'm Anton, first year bioengineering PhD. I think I'm most interested in some of the past research you've done, Kristen Lab, and then how that applies to like everywhere else.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Layla. I'm another first year PhD student. I'm rotating in Dr. Chrisman and Dr. Alperin lab for the biomaterial for women's health research group. And I'm interested in, I just got here, you just left, there's a lot of wisdom that you can give me on that end. So yeah, I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
Hi, I'm Marianne. I just graduated with a PhD in bioengineering and I'm currently a postdoc in the Quan Lab, which is the one that I was in before. I'm interested to hear how your first year in industry has been and how useful the skills that you learned in the PhD have been in your first year. And if you think that most of the work that you're doing uses those skills, or have you been trained on a lot of like new skills?
I can solve it. Hi, my name is Maria. I'm a second year bioengineering PhD student in the Chrisman lab, also on the team for biomaterials for women's health.
And we never got to overlap in the lab and I wanna hear your wisdom.
Yeah, you still can.
I'm Bianca, I'm a fourth year
Let's go,
PhD.
let's go.
Fourth year PhD candidate in the Crispin Lab, also on the women's health side of things, using biomaterials to study pelvic floor disorders and the impact that lactation has on pelvic floor muscle regeneration. Yeah, I think a lot has been said, but like knowing the skills that you've learned in the Crispin Lab, want to see how those have been transferred to your current position. And I know like you were more interested in like doing like community service things and like having that type of mentorship, so I was interested to see if you're able to do that in an industry position. Go for it, Quincy.
I'm Quincy. I'm a second year in the Crispin Lab studying biomaterials for treating acute myocardial infarction. Yeah, I'm really curious to see how you feel about industry as someone who's moving more towards academia right now. I want to see what it's like. Also, I want to see how everything's doing.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm a third year PhD student in genre. I'm interested in hearing kind of like how you can pivot from your grad school experience to industry. And personally, if that pivot is not necessarily what you work on.
I'm Dylan. I'm in the Sylvia Herbert for Streamer Labs. I'm a second year PhD student in mechanical research engineering. And I'm curious about like the cultural differences.
Yeah, maybe more.
Hi, I'm Celeste. I'm a third year medical sciences program and I'm your Zarn person. And I'm interested in hearing about, I guess, like the timeline of you deciding that you wanted to do industry and how you started job and stayed with that and so on. And yeah, like somebody said like how much what you did in your PhD lab.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm also an environmental sciences program. I'm also really interested in kind of like your thinking process of like, yeah, kind of where you decided to apply and how you made that decision.
Oh, hi, I'm Kate. I'm a third year undergrad, in the Crispin Lab. I guess I'm just wondering, what your thoughts on are, getting a PhD as like your route to industry, because I think that's where I'll end up, but I don't know, master's or PhD.
Nice. And you were the last one to come in, so bring us home.
Hi, I'm John. I'm in the bioengineering department, second year grad student. I'm in the Coplin and Quantum Labs, and I work on CAR therapies. And I guess what I'd be interested in is I'm kind of on the cusp of still trying to figure out if I want to do industry or academia.
And you said you was second, third year?
Second,
okay. Got it. No, it was great meeting all of you guys. Seems like Mary Ann's the only one immediately looking for work, huh? Everyone else third, fourth, I guess we're going on the 5-year route. No, it's good to hear some of the things that you all want to learn today, because I'm actually just gonna kind of give you a snapshot of my career trajectory and my career path, and kind of show you how pivoting has gotten me into a ton of different things. And if you don't remember anything else from today, serendipity may be one of the biggest words that you can remember to equate with how I got where I am. Because for me, I can't say that I'm the biggest planner in the world. I just always happen to end up somewhere where there may be an opportunity. So with that, I will introduce myself to you all, since you introduced yourselves to me. That dot right there on the southwest corner of Mississippi is where I was born. If you look at the very zoomed in map at the top, it's right along the cusp of the Mississippi River. Very rural, very warm, very mosquito. So really small town. I want to say you could fit my entire town's population into probably, gosh, what is this area, Warren Mall? I think
Yeah.
all of my town can fit right there. So it's a very small town, and very, I guess, working class, typical industry education or, working class plant, et cetera. So people either go into education or they get some other type of service careers. I did not know a lot about engineering growing up. I did have a few siblings who went in to get their engineering degrees, but they were older siblings. Like, let's say I'm 8 and they're already 30 or something like that. So like, big gap. I didn't know much about them. So I kind of like knew that I was interested in math. I knew I was pretty good at math. I knew I cared about my community because we had a lot of what you would call health disparities. So diabetes, heart disease, all the things that run rampant in rural communities plagued our community. So with that, I'm like, okay, what can you do with wanting to build upon your skills, but also how do you get back to your community in a way that may be able to be meaningful? So here's that serendipity word. I remember it being December of 2011, I think. And I got a postcard from UAB, that's the University of Alabama, Birmingham. They had a really cool yellow, green, colorful cookie on the front of it. And I was like, what is this? These people are like very fancy-ish. I'll read on the back, I was like, there's this major, and I'm just looking through the majors list, and biomedical engineering pops up. I'm only familiar with electrical, mechanical, aerospace. These are all the engineers I've ever heard of. So I was like, what in the world is biomedical engineering? Is that something I can get into? Like, should I attempt to do this? Well, I'm also doing things at the last minute all the time. So I remember literally like December 31st, probably at 11:40 something PM before the deadline for a scholarship was up. I submitted my application and just so happened to actually get that scholarship. So that actually made me want to go ahead and pursue biomedical engineering at UAB. So as you know, I fell asleep earlier that day. We may not be talking today. And so interestingly enough, got to UAB. So there's a lot of things that happened between these two pictures. Got to UAB, didn't know what BME was. I want to say I made a C in every biology class I ever took in undergrad. Math was great, ace and calculus and stuff, but I was like, okay, how am I gonna actually do well in biomedical engineering if I'm not understanding the bio aspects? So what I kind of did was sought out opportunities for tutoring to actually learn from people who've been through this route, but also like, how can you apply this? Because for me, I'm not one of those people who's really big on getting the lecture aspect. I want to know how do we apply it. So there was this program that one of our deans had started where he took old senior design projects that may be this close to commercialization. And it was like, students, you'll have an opportunity to actually work on these projects and actually get them through. So we were working on this nursing aid project, I think, forgetting the name of it, but it's like when you check a patient's nail bed to kind of see if they're like close to shock or something of that sort. So we actually put together a model for that. And that was one of my very first design experiences that I had. And that really kind of inspired me to want to like stick to this instead of being like, yeah, I'm gonna drop out of this biomedical engineering thing. I also ended up going into my first biomaterials tissue engineering classes and was like, oh, people are actually engineering the human body, which a lot of you guys are in bioengineering and understand that, but this is something I wasn't understanding in the, 2013. So I was like, okay, I'm super excited to learn about papers. I'm curious about what people are writing. I think when I got to fast forward to my senior design project, we used the biomaterials approach to actually protect stethoscopes from MRSA. And it was like really one of the catalysts for me to be like, hey, okay, maybe I may be interested in this whole grad school thing. Now, granted, I told you, my catalyst happened in senior design, which is 3 months before I graduated, which means deadlines for graduate applications are what? Over. And so what happened was, I was like, I know I don't have any real lab experience because, you know, I didn't know much about laboratory experience at that time. I was like, okay, focus on classes. I think I had like a side job to kind of pay for things while I was in undergrad. So I was like, how do I get this research experience? How do I actually utilize this to actually make a pathway for me to get to graduate school? So here comes UCSD. I'm walking through UAB one day and there's a poster for an REU on the wall. And I was like, oh, an REU, that could be interesting. I could get research experience there. Do any of y'all know what the U part of REU stands for? Undergrad, right? What time do y'all see this poster? about 3 months before I graduated. So I reached out to the program director at UCSD for this REU, Adam Engler. And I was like, hey, Dr. Engler, I know the U stands for undergrad. I'm gonna have my bachelor's in a couple months. Can I still try to come do this research experience? Like, could I apply for this and actually get this experience? He said no, obviously. Yeah, because it's an undergraduate program, but he was able to point me to this other program called the prep program, which was a post-backward. So people get to get NIH funded research for a year through that program. So I just so happened to be working in the same building as the program director for that opportunity. And I've been working like 2 people below her, like my manager. She was my manager's manager, and she was like, oh, you're about to graduate. What are you about to do? And I was like, I just heard about this cool new program called Prep. I'm super excited. I don't know if I'm gonna get in. She's like, oh, that's my program. And I was like, oh, for real? Yep. So I really got, again, that's the whole serendipity thing again. It just so happened that they were also low on funding that year. So I think they would normally take 8 students. That year, they only took 4. So when I tell you by the grace of God and all the other entities and things like that, they accepted me for prep. So I was able to actually get my first research experience with large animal models where we were looking at the regenerative potential of neonatal pig hearts. So we would infarct these pigs at about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days after birth and survive them to see if their hearts regenerated. Turns out they could. So typically you have a window from around 1 to 3 days after birth that your myocytes are still turning over in your heart. So that's a really great project that I was able to be a part of, because it was like, not only do I go from not having my own research experience at all, I jump right into like this huge, like groundbreaking research project where I actually got to get my first, I think I quantified their fibrosis for that study. So I learned how to do histology during the project. So with all that said, I just messaged Dr. Engler again, was like, hey, I really appreciate you telling me about this program. I got in. I just want to let you know I'm applying to graduate schools now, and I appreciate you letting me know about it. So I'm going to apply to UCSD. We're talking today, so I got in. But I really think that experience that I got through prep really helped me. So it's between all of the community engagement that I wanted to do in Birmingham, which I kind of spoke to. There were a few other instances that I did in Birmingham where we actually did other device designs in the community, and also just getting that research experience. So that really helped me. So that's why I was like, this is really good for you to be here as an undergraduate, because again, I didn't know what I was gonna do until like 2 months before I graduated. So you can definitely find a way. There's always time. Fast forward to all of this stuff. I ended up getting to UCSD, joining Karen Christman's lab, learning how to do our decellularized tissues to treat different diseases. In particular, for me, I was looking at a form of right ventricular heart failure. Got a chance to present at several different conferences, some of the results that we were able to get from our project. A few other things that I really did enjoy was giving back to the community, like I said, so actually going out with bags and doing the research expos, as well as doing recruitments for the graduate school. This picture, just because I love to travel, that's gonna tie in a little bit, but you kind of want to define your unique awesomeness. And that's what's gonna tell you how you are going to be able to fit well into whatever your potential career paths may be. So keeping that travel in mind, because something Alex brought up earlier about when are you ever here? And this last thing is right before we got our IND, which is an investigational new drug designation for some of the work that I was doing in Karen Christman's lab. So we took the therapeutic that I had been studying, and it was actually approved to go into clinical trials for these pediatric patients. I am not interested in talking about a lot of science today, so I'm going to briefly talk about what I did and condense my entire graduate school down into this one slide. So the condition I was looking at was called hypoplastic left heart syndrome. And that's a syndrome in which these babies are born literally with a half of a heart. So their left ventricle, if you look at this middle picture, is practically non-existent. So that's your main systemic pump. That's what's gonna get all your oxygen to the rest of your body. So without that, these patients will typically die a little bit after birth. Now, after a while, there have been strides in the medical field where surgeries, they'll go through 3 surgeries and it'll make their right ventricle their main systemic pump and make all of their pulmonary system completely passive. So they'll take those arteries, pulmonary arteries, and attach them directly to the lung. To the vena cava, right out to the lungs. So with that, sure, you've kind of stopped that one issue of not being able to get blood out to the system. But another thing is the right ventricle is what, about 1/3 of the left ventricle. It's not meant to pump blood throughout your body for the rest of your life. So one thing that we were curious about doing, and one thing that the Chrisman Lab had shown prior to me taking on the study, was that if we inject this material into patients who have myocardial infarction, we can actually mitigate some of their negative remodeling. So basically, negative remodeling is what's going to eventually push those patients into heart failure. So what I saw with these patients is they have a similar cascade to that negative remodeling, and that's that they'll end up going into this maladaptive remodeling where their right ventricle will begin to dilate, it'll thicken, and ultimately fibrose, so it'll become scarred. So let's say we took our material that was derived from either the left ventricle or right ventricle from porcine hearts. We chopped it up, not enzymatically digested, sorry. Decellularized it using a detergent. Then we lyophilized it, milled it down into a fine powder, and then enzymatically digested it. One thing that I was also curious about, since we were treating a right ventricle condition, was like, will a material from the right ventricle be more beneficial to this right ventricle case than one from the left? So we actually compared those using mass spectrometry, mass spec, and actually found out that, yeah, these two materials typically are a tad different. Now, it doesn't make a lot of difference applicably. So like, are you gonna actually see any functional benefits to them being different? Maybe not, but we found that the right ventricle decelled material was typically made up of much more fibrillar collagens, and the left ventricle material was more of those structural ECM. So I think one, I'm not recalling right, maybe collagen ones. I also was curious about what that did to cardiac specific cells. So like, would these materials actually affect those cells that are specific to the heart in any type of way? And we found out that they could induce angiogenesis in these cells. So actually you get these cells to want to pump out different cytokines that will promote angiogenesis. So we did find that after the peptides from this material did induce that in these cells. So that was an actually curious finding. Jumping into more of what I was curious about was actually what happens if we take that in vivo. And what we did find is if you inject these materials into an animal that's pulmonary artery banded. So banding is what's going to give us that pressure overload that's similar to what these patients are going to see. And we inject it 2 weeks after banding. Up to a month later, we see improvements in their TAPSEs, which are just a measure of systolic function. So we injected these materials in these animals compared to our saline controls. We did see improvement to their systolic function, showing there was better improvement to their pumping capacity, as well as we saw improvements to their systolic volumes. I didn't include it here, but diastolic volumes, as well as improvements to their injection fraction. So we were actually seeing functional benefit to using either of these materials to treat these animals. And finally, we did see a reduction in their wall thickness, meaning that they were probably getting to a more sweet spot when it came to not going into a supreme maladaptive wall thickening. And of course, super fast, again, I wanted to show that we could prevent or mitigate that fibrosis. So this is just a saline image right here, where we saw reductions in fibrosis when we used either material compared to our saline groups, as well as we saw improvements in cross-sectional area of these myocytes. So literally, were these myocytes being stressed out to be bigger? Again, what I was mentioning about the dilation. And finally, we did find evidence of mechanism of action, more or less, with these materials, showing that we were affecting pathways that were more pro-reparative as opposed to pro-inflammatory. So we did actually see some really nice findings with this. My dissertation and these papers are published if you would like to read them. But going into a few other things that kind of drive me personally is again, like I said, that community service. So getting out into the community and doing more kind of helps drive what I wanted to do. So all of these things were going on in the background of my PhD. We go home, if you look at this bottom right image, we were doing yoga to kind of show people how they could reduce their blood pressure rates by doing yoga. So we literally came in with blood pressure monitor cuffs. We took their pressures beforehand, then we did yoga, and then we took it afterwards to demonstrate to them how they would see a reduction in their blood pressure by being able to relax or do something such as yoga. So that's one way we were able to implement a bit of a health conscious or health education in our community. Another thing that we wanted to do was actually get with students. So here, we just had them model lungs with bottles, straws. And so if you all seen the diaphragm bottle where you get the negative pressure in the bottle with the straw and stuff, you just show up. So it's like, hey, I want to show you guys kind of how you can model what your lungs look like. So we took those bottles and let the students fill out those. And here's a little Olympic style event that we did. And it's really took these high school students and allowed them to do a ton of different things. So whether it be for their mental health, so we have a mental health specialist on board for our first section. Then we did kind of fun games. So this is like my lawn darts Jeopardy that you can kind of see down here at the bottom. So we like literally would just let them throw the darts. It would hit a specific category and they would literally do Jeopardy. So it's like, okay, cool. Can you tell me what a fasting heart rate should be? Or should you tell me like, you know, what's the best resting position to increase oxygen capacity after you're like running or playing some kind of sport? So really trying to be super health conscious with this community. And of course, you may see somebody else you may notice in that top left corner. This is me and Josh using PPE semi-fine. Josh is good. Got some medical grade liquid nitrogen, and we just really wanted the kids to see something new. So I was like, okay, I've done this cream and liquid nitrogen thing before. So we made ice cream for the kids using this cream and liquid nitrogen. I was like, hey, I can show you guys magic and stuff. So that's like over the potion. So why did I tell you these snapshots about my life and how I got here? I've been attempting to build this mission statement for myself for a while when it comes to designing my own career and understanding my purpose within my career. And what I've really noticed is that I'm interested in providing any expertise that I can to communities who may not have gotten it when it comes to being health conscious, or even being able to educate and bring people up who don't have those same opportunities. And another thing that I've always wanted to do is utilize the knowledge that I've gained to actually design tools in the medical field that actually benefit all patient populations. So I'll get into that in a really quick second. Well, actually, no, I'll get into that right now. So what am I doing now? Really quick screenshot of kind of what I've been doing over the last year. I am currently a senior engineer at Becton Dickinson and Company. So this is a medical device company that works on anything that you could name. If you've seen a syringe, it probably has BD on it. I included this top picture because it kind of gives a snapshot of what my current project is right now, and also I'm gloating because, you know, I'm winning posters and stuff. So here it's just showing that within my role as a project lead, that I'm actually driving an interdisciplinary team to get results to actually move this project out of our idea phase and through our pipeline to ultimately go into our planning, development, and ultimately getting to launch. A few things that I kind of take care of here is kind of what they mentioned when you're communicating disease states. So understanding what that disease is we're focused on and making sure we're actually designing such that we hit every patient that we can. We'll make sure we're not missing anybody when we do our design controls. Redefining our need statements, or refining it and redefining it. And how many of you all have done Stanford Biodesign? Interesting. So I did Stanford Biodesign in undergrad at UAB. That was part of our senior design project. So it was so funny to me when I got to this company and they're like, hey, we need you guys to do Stanford Biodesign training and get us, oh, I haven't heard about that since undergrad. It's like, I got so used to doing biomaterials, I got so used to doing therapeutics I kind of forgot about how you do medical device design. So that's one thing that I would say you should consider if you want to go into the medical device design space. The Stanford Biodesign route is pretty gold standard for when you're talking about creating new medical devices. Another thing that I do as a project lead is kind of work hand in hand with my marketing counterpart, as well as work hand in hand with my regulatory counterpart. We don't have a clinical yet because we can't afford it. Who else? And our quality. So we have this project in idea phase, and three things that I'm trying to work with them is one, we've gotten this pre-submission in to the FDA. Saying, hey, these are the animal studies that we want to do to show safety before we can go first in humans. So we really want to drive that critical path to make sure we're getting that project out in a timely fashion. We're talking timely fashion. We're talking launching 2030 at the earliest. I would love if it was 2030, we're more likely talking 2032, 2034. But it's really managing all of those different functionalities to make sure your products are hitting that critical path. So for instance, with this, I'm slightly frustrated that my pre-sub is not going out yet, because without that pre-sub, I can't run my GLP study. And the FDA has us on a 60-day turnaround with that with that feedback. So if we're gonna utilize their feedback to do this study, then 60 days from that submission is what we're gonna get their feedback. And then will we be able to use that in time enough to make any changes to our study? And then also you're managing tons of different dollar amounts, whether or not they exist or not. Do you have your devices built and sterilized? So I have device bills that I need to make sure are out to get tested appropriately, get through sterilization, and make it to us in time to actually make it for that GLP study. So you have to really be able to see the critical path and then be able to manage it, as well as manage others around you who are gonna be instrumental in hitting those particular time points. And as graduate students, I'm almost certain that you've gotten used to doing that, and you've been held up by someone else before on your project. And you really, really needed them to push something through for you. So that's a skill that you kind of learn along the way, is that, hey, how do you actually empower that person to get the results that you need to push your projects through? So that's one thing that I can really point to that helped me when I transitioned into industry. Included the semi-lab picture before we did our x-rays and stuff. So before we did fluoroscopy, which would be this image where we're testing our device, making sure everything's aligned, etc. And this is just to show that's maybe 2% of my job. I don't think I've done a ton of bench work, animal work, etc. since I've left graduate school. A lot of it has been a project lead, has really been managing timelines, making sure everything gets into place. And being able to communicate your ideas and be able to communicate what you need to make sure the project continues pushing forward. Additionally, I included this because I'm also still proud of it. I always volunteer for stuff. No matter if you have the time for it, volunteer. So this was an innovation contest we did at our unit in peripheral intervention. So this is an email coming out from our vice president, just congratulating the teams. And they really just wanted us to use that Stanford Biodesign process to come up with a strategic adjacency somewhere that our company may be able to play in. So with my team, I was able to actually kind of drive us to get this unmet need statement, redacted a few things, of course. But you know, you really want to understand with your unmet need statements, what are you trying to prevent? So like, what are you trying to do? What's your patient population? So in blue. And then what are you actually trying to solve? So what is the solution that's typically in green if you get an unmet need statement? Interestingly enough, like I said, we did win. This project is now in our idea pool, and idea pool will eventually be picked up to become a new product. So that's going to go through similar to what my main project is. So that was me being able to contribute to our new product development cycle by actually contributing a new idea that may eventually be a product for our company one day. So like I said, if you find opportunities, stretch assignments, like we call them, do it. You never know what you learn. I also learned that teamwork is very similar to being in school again. Everybody not gonna do what they're supposed to do. So, you need to be able to, again, know how to manage, who your teammates are, be able to manage your relationships and understand how you're going to drive those, goals that everyone has. I included this because it's a human heart and a lot of people never see human hearts. Yeah, we don't want to get to that, so let's start, working out and exercising and stuff. But no, this was a cadaver lab where we were also attempting to test out our device before we actually went into our animal model. So it's like, okay, let me get in, can we actually align the devices the way we want to in these human cadavers? Before we actually go into these animals. And finally, this is an event I put on about 3 weeks ago, where again, I mentioned that I'm really big on focusing on health disparities and health equity. So I reached out to some of our leading key opinion leaders or key stakeholders in the company. Actually got one of our directors in our marketing side, marketing directors who focuses on our oncology side to actually give this talk. And she brought in someone from the American Cancer Society as well to give this talk about breast cancer awareness and health equity. And we were really just trying to educate our associates on what we can do to better educate each other to know more about breast cancer, but also how do we educate the public better because of our duties working in this space. Because again, we all work in healthcare. We're going to talk about this all the time. The person who's working at, I don't know, 5 and below or et cetera, they're not having those conversations with their coworkers all the time. So how do we improve our communication to the public? And how do we also explain some of those differences that may occur if you're not thinking about them? Health equity has been really big for me because if you think about medical device design, one that keeps popping up a lot is this oxygen pulse oximeter. So these patients, if you're familiar with it, that company is probably really kicking themselves right now because their oxygen saturation looks different depending on your skin tone. And that's something they did not consider when they were designing their device. And that's one thing that you could implement much earlier. The FDA does not require it yet. In fact, most of the health equity that the FDA is working on at the moment is more on the clinical trial side. But I was like, yeah, clinical trial is great, but what does that mean if we've already kind of made our device and now we're testing it? Like, sure, we have a diverse population in our trials, but earlier on, if you made it specifically a certain way, it doesn't matter who you have it in. You need to be able to account for that much earlier. So another stretch assignment that I'm doing is getting health equity considerations into our design control so much earlier on. So when we're thinking about our user needs, when we're thinking about getting our, what we call a DIS, which is design input specifications. Because how is the engineer going to actually build a device without those user inputs or user needs? So that's something I'm kind of working on the side as well. In my current position. So mainly, again, one, trying to drive this one device through our new product development phase. That's my main position. My second role at this moment, now that we've gotten this new idea into our idea pool, is hopefully getting it out and into the idea early design state phase for that project. And then finally getting our design controls updated such that we're thinking about intended use populations and that we're thinking about controlling for bias. So those are many of the things that I've been focused on within industry. And there are a few things that I know that I left off, so if there are burning questions, don't hesitate to stop me. Please interrupt me. Because from there, I stole this from someone else in my company. So he actually had his Design Your Career course that I took earlier this year. And then I'm going to retake because I'm like, okay, I really want to be able to come out with a really nice mission statement to understand what I'm doing. Because if you understand why you're doing things, you won't really hurt for a position. So you won't just be like, hey, I need to be a senior scientist at X company. You're like, my goal is to make global impacts in health and cardiovascular patients by using certain technology. So you understand what your purpose is. So I brought that up to say, awesome careers don't happen by accident, they happen by design. So you have to design it. The power of human nature is that each human's nature is unique. So your responsibility is to take serious the uniqueness of your uniqueness, or what they call your unique awesomeness, which I kind of alluded to earlier. And design the most intelligent and most honest and the most effective ways to volunteer to the rest of us. So like that should really kind of help guide you when you're thinking about pushing forward into your new careers. I'm not gonna go through all of this because again, I mentioned that I'm still working on filling this out and understanding what my core design is. I have a good idea and have tailored it a little bit, but you really want to understand what you love, what you're good at, what you offer for the world, and what they're gonna reward you for. Like, you still want to get paid. What are they gonna pay you to do? So just a really quick thing, because I want to talk about these four in the middle. Profession, strength, mission, and vocation. With your strengths. Excuse me, there's a unique way that they explain this. Yeah, your strengths are literally just the loves that you develop. So you know what you love and like how much time have you put into them. That's what you can consider your strengths. Your mission is what you love to offer. So what do you love to give to the world? Your profession obviously is a career you pursue to get paid. Like that's what your profession is going to end up being. And your vocation is a career to make a positive difference. So once you get all of those aligned, you really do have your unique awesomeness, you got your design. Right now, what I do know that I love is for sure working in medical device design or working in bio design, period. So whether that be therapeutic devices. I also love communicating science. Even though I didn't go deep into my science today, I still enjoy communicating science. I love travel, so I brought travel up. I figured out a way to find out how can I utilize my interest in travel with my company. So a lot of things that I do have to take care of are managing CROs. So those are going to be our research organizations that are outside of the company. So these people are going to run our experiments for us. What conferences am I going to be going to understand what the new innovations are, such that we can get back and modify our designs or understand how we can innovate. What I'm good at, definitely still working on that. What I offer to the world, I'd like to say is a way to pivot, like understanding how to recognize opportunity. I think that's one of the, I say serendipity, but I think that's also been coded as I've also learned how to recognize opportunity. And what organizations will reward me for, if you make them money, they will reward you, but not seriously. And really big lesson that was learned, soft skills don't exist. I don't want to hear another engineer say anything about soft skill. That's not true. Soft skills are leadership skills. So any skill that you consider what you call quote unquote soft is what will make you a leader. So take those and utilize them to build upon your leadership. And I bring that up to say leading without authority. A really good example of this is, I think I had to make a decision for getting, so we had our EVP in town. I think we had to get like a room booked and nobody was jumping on it. Like you literally have to be, oh, what am I just doing? I'm a senior engineer. We're talking about literally the highest leadership of the company. And I'm making decisions to be able to influence her route throughout her day. And without that, her day could have probably been derailed in some format. And that was good because it got me one-on-one interaction with her to actually talk about some of my interests. So you kind of tied it into leading without authority, understanding opportunity, and then two, actually not being afraid to talk to people. It's kind of what I was talking about with like messaging Dr. Engler. Like you gotta just really not be afraid to reach out to someone because you think that you're at a lower position in them. Conflict management and resolution. We had a CRO that we wanted imaging from. We wanted to look at the prostate. Tell me why they sent us a picture of this animal's tail. So, we're not working with them anymore. But you have to be able to understand that. So I could have easily been like, hey, crazy emails, shut those people off. It's like, no, you have to understand, okay, what happened? Was there something that went wrong in communication? Was there this specific associate, were they having a bad day, were they miscommunicated? And so I really just kind of sat down and actually went to Atlanta and had to scratch that part. Just in case y'all figure out what I'm talking about. Went there, had a conversation with them and really was like, hey, we understand that there may have been some breakdown in communication. So I really want to chat with you about how we can improve this further on, because, you know, we still need to be able to get these studies done. Adaptability and being able to pivot. There are some, you need money in industry, and that's one thing that I also forgot to mention. Industry is slow and you're dependent on money. There are some projects that just don't move if there's no budget for it. And I really need to understand the specific anatomy of this patient population, but you typically can't get that without getting the images. So what I've been working on lately is how do I get that for free? I've been able to obtain roughly 5 different patient images from different sources, and that's literally like going out and being able to pivot, because that gives us more than 0 that we understand if we'll be able to actually create or treat this specific patient population. So don't just let someone tell you we don't have the money and you just sit on it. Like, okay, how are you gonna pivot? How are you gonna get the results that you need? Persuasion and empowerment. Everyone on the team is gonna have different strengths. What is this saying about a fish, judging a fish on its ability to climb a tree? I don't think it's dumb or something. Yeah, everyone's gonna have different strengths. So sometimes you may not want this person to present orally. Maybe they are amazing at CAD. Can you bring that out of them to get you guys the best imaging that you can, so you can get that out and report it? Or maybe this person is phenomenal at research. They're able to go through and synthesize all the information that you need quicker than anyone else, but they are not great at putting together a PowerPoint. So it's really understanding what different associates, different people you work with are good at, and then empowering them. And then finally, kind of what I mentioned, time and critical path management. Projects die if you don't hit deadlines, especially if like they're hugely funded. So you really need to be able to manage your time, see the big picture, and know what's going on. So those are kind of the key lessons that I learned. It's like, hey, time management, persuasion, adaptability, conflict, leading without authority, all of that may seem like soft skills where you're just dealing with people, but those are gonna be some of the things that are gonna make and break your projects, no matter how technically gifted you are. And I'm looking at the time, and I don't know if you guys have questions. I might skip over a lot of these last slides because they're kind of what I just talked about. Anyway, skills of the biomedical engineer. Of course, you can have project managing, design thinking, multidisciplinary teams, or managing multidisciplinary teams, data analysis, as well as scientific communication. And I just kind of wanted to hear from the audience, just, what type of ways could you do communication better? Like, these are your transferable skills you get out of grad school. Is your communication skills, your confidence, your optimism, your patience. Don't send me a tail on actual prostate. Time management and organization, as well as that love for learning. Do more public speaking. It'll do way better for you than you think. You don't have to be the best gifted orator, but I think you should still attempt to get out and practice it every once in a while. So I think it gets you being able to communicate your ideas, get you a long way in industry. So like get out and speak a little bit more to kind of practice that. Network intentionally. Don't add somebody on LinkedIn just to add. If you're gonna add them, shoot them a message, explain what you're interested in. It's like, hey, I noticed you're doing X, Y, Z. I'm curious about ABC. Would you mind taking a moment to chat with me? I did that several times before I graduated graduate school. In fact, they prefer to talk to you while you're a student. They don't answer my messages now that I'm in the industry. So take advantage of that now. Look at the big picture, like why are you attempting to network with this person or these persons? Remove the pressure. Be confident, it's just like you're meeting a friend or meeting a new friend. Leverage your social media, like I was saying, if you're gonna utilize LinkedIn or something like that, be intentional with it. Describe why you want to meet with them. What do you have to offer them back? Because obviously, there may be something that they can gain from you. And then also strengthen those existing relationships you already have. I can't sit here and explain all the opportunities that I've gotten through knowing someone else. These are a bunch of different careers you can do with an bioengineering PhD, and there are a ton of others that I did not include. Like there's literally the PhD opens up your world to a ton of opportunities. So don't feel pigeonholed to just be an R&D engineer, and don't feel pigeonholed to just be a professor. There are a ton of things you can do. If any of y'all do law and you want to push any patents through for me, let me know. Yeah, and we can chat about that a little bit offhand. Job search resources, use LinkedIn, use Indeed, use other professional societies. So when you're out at BMES, when you're out at biomaterials conferences, when you're out at any of the MG conferences, don't be afraid to network. I think I got a postdoc offer from some professor at Yale, I forgot, right after I presented at a conference before I graduated. And it's literally because we just chatted over a beer that evening. So again, utilize these conferences to your advantage. Kind of get to know yourself. I love this thing. I need to redo it. 16 personalities is nice. There is nothing quantitative about it at all. But utilize it. You could learn maybe how your personality may be different throughout the year. And one that I've been using at work actually is Stand Out. So loveandwork.org Stand Out. This is actually a really good one to get you to kind of understand what you have to offer. So like it kind of tells you about the things that you may want to get out of your work opportunities. I can screenshot these and send them out or something much later. I can share it over Alex to send to the group where you guys can rewatch the recording. And then I just included this here as other career resources. Cheeky Scientist is actually really interesting. I didn't realize they had so many different ways to find professionals on Cheeky Scientist. And with that, hopefully I didn't take entirely too much time and you can get in at least a couple questions.
Let me share with the group first. Thank you, Dr. Hunter. Yay. If I don't mess up the recording, it will be available on our YouTube channel. If anybody wants to revisit those or any of the other videos that we have. Thank you. So
Yeah, no problem.
questions, please. Gotta be lots of questions.
So, you were mentioning that you do very little bench work now. Do you miss that, like being in the lab?
There are some things. So there's actually this mission trip that we have that I'm maybe applying for what we're gonna do. So I wanted to say like blood test work or something, microbiology in Rwanda. That's just more so my own personal, like wanted to get global and help like build out. So like that's an opportunity for me to go back to the bench. Am I seeking bench opportunities? No. I do enjoy the animal work still. So I'm still designing animal studies. I really want to get that one study started in December. Budgets obviously are getting in my way. But yeah, I think the amount of testing you do can vary depending on the projects you're on. I just happen to take one that's gonna be a little bit more focused on preclinical. And I have a goal to go first in human next year. So like, I'm trying to get to clinical trials. That's more of my pathway.
And then do you think that the lack of, I guess, bench work you do or like working in the lab that you do, is that your choice? Or is that an option if you wanted to do it?
Again, it's gonna be project specific.
Yeah.
So if I'm working, so I'm gonna do bench testing. So all of the devices that we have out for builds, our devices out for build, we have to go through our ISO testing and everything to make sure they're up to standard. So like we are gonna run those tests and I may be there for a few of them, but I also have other engineers for me. So more or less, I'm more so in the preclinical side, but I do know other people who work like directly in the lab. Like I have a colleague who's literally in the lab every day. So it just really depends on your project, what stage the project is in and what you're attempting to do. I'll take you then.
So the position that you have now, did you get to this through traditional route of finding a posting online and applying, or did this come through networking?
Good old serendipity. So, actually an older graduate student in my lab, Marty Spain, had applied right before he graduated. And he told me what it was about, and I said, oh, okay, cool, and I applied, but once it was around my turn, so this is what, 2022, so I applied twice, actually, they didn't let me in the first time. So I'm an R&D engineer, but I'm also in an R&D leadership program. So that allows me to rotate throughout our business units every around 2 years to work on different projects to ultimately move into other leadership. So mainly like engineering management or associate directors, things like that. I applied on a whim. He sent it to me. I had no idea what the company did. I applied and it just kept working. And so I just kept learning from each of my different interviews and then finally got there. I was really curious about medical affairs and they kind of shot me in the foot the first time. And I was like, okay, dial back on the medical affairs stuff since you know this is an R&D program. And I can speak to functions later because like I know functions still bother me a little bit and understanding what they are. But med affairs is much different. They work with R&D, but it's not R&D. So when you're applying for like an R&D job, you're like, oh, okay, for instance, like, hey, you want to work at Burger King, but you keep talking about how bad you want to work at Shoe Shop. That's kind of how they come across if you're like, oh, I want to go do med affairs and this is an R&D program. So long story short, I did see a posting. I think they actually send it out. We still send it out, like we just did it this cycle. We're taking applicants this cycle. And we'll do it again in the spring. But yeah, I just really saw what the program was about. I was like, okay, it's curious. I like being able to be mentored. I like being able to learn new dynamic things and of course, travel. So that caught my attention, that caught my eye, and that's what made me interested. And then I like the global impact our company has. Like we do a lot of things globally. Like I think we just got our cervical cancer squad out in Kenya recently. That helps out a lot. I think they did a nursing trip out there recently. I'm curious about what they can do stateside, so that's gonna be neat. I was like, yeah, we can go other places. Let's fix some stuff here. But yeah, that's one of the reasons I was interested in that this company. Is that the last of the question?
Yeah, I guess my follow-up question is, so it sounds like you applied for sort of a program within the company?
Yeah, so this,
Not necessarily the position.
yeah.
And the
Exactly.
position rotates every few years.
And I can talk about that more offline, like I can do a little bit more info. I considered doing it, but I was like, let me show you guys the pathways first, and and they're not paying me to tell y'all this, so I'm gonna tell you offline. But yeah, I'll let you know about that.
It was similar.
Okay.
Like, you know, projects that like you kind of juggle on like openings based on projects.
Okay, yeah, so like, for instance, like I said, I'm in the R&D role right now. On the early side, I could be going further into like a product launch. I had opportunity, so a proposal came across for me to do a project launch where they actually wanted me at the end stage of one of our projects, actually making sure we get that project out to launch. I actually found out a very interesting thing about that one too, when it came to health equity, because actually we can stop recording.
Thank you again.
One of